We're here with this bad boy mower, taking a look. Customer said he mowed about half of his yard and it started bogging down real bad on him. These Kohler 7000 series engines like this are known for a few different issues. We're going to go over those and what could be causing this bogging issue and show you how to fix it. First things first, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the like button if you enjoy the content. This is a Kohler KT745. Again, the 7000 series. It's got the bigger air filter. Bogging could be caused from something as simple as a plugged up air filter. This thing's brand new. That's not going to be our problem. Next thing you want to check is your fuel. If you don't know where the fuel came from, you can always take the line off, get a little bit out, see how it looks in a glass jar. If it's got anything separated to the bottom of it at all, you know that that fuel is not good. Fuel supply. It could be not getting a good fuel supply. We see a lot of times, oh, well, that was interesting. The vent just popped up. That could mean that this has popped up before and it's got debris in the tank also. Many times that debris in the tank, if there is some, it will pull from the bottom of the tank and come up through and it'll get caught at this corner and it'll restrict fuel flow. So it'll run for a while perfectly fine, but it won't continue running because it starves itself for fuel eventually. Fuel line doesn't look good. It looks like it's probably the original fuel line from when this thing was built. Thing's quite a few years old. I'm not sure exactly when it was made. It's got plenty of use. Fuel line could also be the issue because it could be collapsing on itself on the inside. Many a times they will also deteriorate on the inside, and when that stuff gathers, it'll gather at any kind of corner. Right before the fuel filter, right before the fuel pump, depending on where it's broken down at. If you check your fuel and you know you're getting good flow to the carburetor, it could also be a carburetor issue. Give your unit a little bit of choke, see if that helps it run better. See if you give it a little bit of choke and it runs better, you know that you've got a carburetor or a fuel air issue. You know it is not some other sort of issue. This is a V-twin, so it could be running on only one cylinder. That happens many a times where one is firing and the other isn't. It will still run on one cylinder, but you won't have good power. You can test that very easily by unplugging and grounding out one plug, just getting it anywhere back to metal, and starting it. If you start it on that side, and it runs fine, and then you flip over the other spark plug and it doesn't run, you know that you have your cylinder that isn't firing. Let's give it a little choke. Oh no, this thing. after, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes of running or so, as you can tell, it sounds like it lost all power. We took the fuel line off here and we get good flow. The fuel is nice and clear. Customer claims he uses ethanol free. The fuel is not going to be the issue. If you pull some fuel out of here and see a layer of water or ethanol on the bottom, definitely empty the fuel, start over. Also, if it starts to sound like this or starts to bog down or die out, you give it a little bit of choke, it stays running. Again, you know you have a fuel air issue. But if you take this off at the fuel filter and you put a line on it into here when it's dying, if it's still pumping good amount of fuel, you know that the issue is not the fuel pickup being blocked, the fuel line or the filter or anything up to that point. It eliminates that whole part of the system and you can focus on the other areas. This is not a carburetor issue. If you pull the choke while you're doing this, it does not help the situation. If it was bogging down like this and you pulled the choke and it was to help and it wouldn't bog down, again, that would lead to a fuel air issue. Let's test these cylinders independently to make sure they are both working. We'll unplug one cylinder, see what kind of difference that makes. Besides the whole mower seeming like it wants to go forward and drive off the table on me, no change. That parking brake isn't working real well. Unplug this side. That tells us that this side is still working perfectly, that this side of the engine is running the mower. I had to give it a little bit of choke on that side to start for some reason. We know both cylinders are operating independently at this point. That means that the spark is good, the compression is good, the valve train is good, there's no bent push rods. On this, we tested the spark earlier with a spark checker. That is an easy way to do it. I don't know what I did with it now, but luckily I've got them kind of all around. You just clip it on and it tells you if the spark is low, okay, or high. They work extremely well. If you don't have a spark checker, you can pull out the spark plug. It's a 5/8 or a 16mm wrench or socket, deep well. And if you hold it against the block, anywhere that's metal, just insulate yourself with a rag or something to keep from getting shocked by the spark. You should be able to see, while holding it against there, you should see in between the middle probe and the outside edge, you should see a nice blue spark. If you don't, obviously it's not sparking. That could be why one cylinder or the other is not working if it's not running on one side. It could also be a valve issue. If you've checked the spark, you can pull off the valve cover and see if your valves are good. See if the push rods are bent or anything like that. Everything should be tight in there and be moving if you spin the top. We'll take the top off here to do this leak down test and get to the bottom of what's going on. Couple 10mm bolts holding the fuel line on. Got a few 5/16 straight down through for the air filter housing. These are going into plastic, so they're going to look a little bit different than some. The other ones are just a little bit bigger. Same thing, going into plastic. And then we've got 4 5/16 bolts around the outside edge. One here, one on the opposite side, and then 2 in back. And then the whole cover comes straight up and off. Top comes straight up. Now that we know that our compression is over 170 pounds on both sides, we know that the leak down test showed very minimal loss. I went ahead and threw new plugs in it. If you're not getting spark on one side or the other, you can, check the spark plug, make sure it's good. Flip the spark plugs from side to side or however you want to do it. We're going to test these coils without the whole electrical system. We're going to unplug the kill wire. Now, when we go to shut this down, you will not be able to turn off this mower, so you may have to resort to an alternative method. Many people will put like a zip tie around the wire just so they can pull it off, but you want to make sure that this thing is on level ground. This one here was creeping on me a little bit. If it started creeping and I can't kill it, that's an issue, right? Be prepared for whatever's going to happen while you're doing this, because you cannot kill the coils out. It will kill the fuel solenoid, but that does take a little bit of time to stop it, longer than what the ignition coil itself would by grounding it out. Testing these like this, if we tested one side and saw no spark, that would tell you that the coil is bad. But if you unplug this and then you're getting spark, either the wire is bad or one of your safeties is causing a problem. Now, that's not the issue on this one, but if it's an intermittent coil, it can still cause this to happen. This will tell us if it's a coil issue or if it's an issue with the electrical system back through, since we've already tested everything else. We know we have good fuel, good compression, good spark. Well, at least we tested the spark and it shows good, but it could be killing out at some point or giving us a bad reading. Let's see what happens. No change. That tells us, even though both of these cylinders are firing independently, we're getting spark, we're getting compression, we're getting good fuel, and it's still not running right. We've got a problem with our ignition coils. You can test the ohms resistance back through, see if it's good. Both of these test good, but I've seen enough of these Kohler 7000 mowers with this issue to know one of these coils has got an issue. This thing's got 385 hours on it. They both got the same amount of hours on that coil. We're gonna estimate flipping them both out, and there's actually a mouse nest over here. It doesn't look like you really chewed any of the wiring, but you never know on something like this. We're probably gonna estimate a wiring harness and then also estimate the ignition coils to the customer, which should completely take care of this issue. This mouse nest cleared out real quick. Got the ignition coils. They're 3258425-S. Use a 5/16 to get the screws out. Pull it off and you'll install the new one exactly the same way. It doesn't look real good down in there. Spin it around to where your magnet is. Now you can clean that up if you want to. Honestly, doesn't really matter much. It's not going to change your magnetic coil or anything, or your magnetic field. It's still going to create a spark as it goes across, but a lot of people like to do that. Just something a lot of us, I think, were taught to do. Put it straight up against the magnet, business card in between. I think 10 thousandths is about what it is. Look it up in the service manual if you're unsure. Standard business card is going to work well. Just kind of push against it and tighten down. Be careful not to over tighten those if you're using a impact or something that you're not used to. If you want to know if it's far enough away, as long as you were shining light at the bottom and you could see light in between the outside edge and the magnet, you know that it's far enough away. Let's get the other side done. Get this one plugged in. On this, it's got a RPM sensor, so you will have to unwrap this wire, and then you just wrap that around the new one, just like that one was. See how this thing does. So we figured out the issue. The ignition coil definitely needed replaced. We are going to go ahead and replace the wiring harness. It's a few days away though. We're going to put this back. After running it for about half an hour, everything worked perfect. Blade still engaged well. We've got the problem solved. Now, if you're still chasing issues at this point, you could have issues with the valve spacing. If your valve spacing's too wide, you could lose a lot of power. If your valves aren't seating right, if you've got a blown head gasket, all of those things, though, would be told with your leak down test. It would tell you if you were having one of those issues when you did those different tests. Follow everything down the line. If you don't have those tools, rent them at a local auto parts store. A lot of times they have them for rent there. If not, find a buddy that has one. They're not too terribly expensive. A compression tester's only 25, 30 bucks for the brand we use, the Lyle ones. If you're having issues with intermittent running, you can spray everything down, spray the intake down, make sure that you're not pulling air from somewhere. But if it's consistent like this is, where after a short time, you lose half your power, one cylinder's dropping out is a likely issue on one of these engines. I see it a lot on these 300, 400, 500 hours. Hopefully this helps somebody out there get to the bottom of their problem. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content.